Coming up on One Detroit, the story behind a new restaurant on the city's east side and the power of a neighborhood group that helped make it happen. Plus, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson take on the week's headlines. Also coming up, an idea that started in a basement turns into a brand with a message. And how one Detroit dad is teaching other dads to be the best parents they can be. I'm Christy McDonald. Join me for One Detroit.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.
Hi, I'm Christy McDonald, and welcome to One Detroit. We are at our Detroit Public Television studios with a full show coming up for you. We're going to take you to Norma G's. It's the first sit-down dining restaurant in Jefferson-Chalmers in 30 years. You'll hear how it all happened. Plus, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson debate the lame duck agenda moving fast in Lansing and the fallout from GM's cuts and closings. Also, a clothing line with a message. You'll hear the story behind it. And you'll see how dads are getting the help that they need to parent their kids in the best way that they can. It is all coming up on One Detroit. But we begin with the story of a new restaurant in the Jefferson-Chalmers neighborhood. And it's not just the story of a new place to eat in the city. What caught our attention is how Norma G's came to be. It took a man with a food truck and a neighborhood development organization with the space and a lot of clout to help pull in philanthropy, city investment, and serious capital just to start one business. It's the beginning of dinner service at Norma G's in the Jefferson-Chalmers neighborhood on Detroit's east side. Bright colors on the walls, the subtle smell of spice, and music. You realize you've come to one of the only places serving Caribbean cuisine in the city. And owner Lester Govaya makes sure his dishes are done just as his mother, the original Norma G, would have fixed them.
This thing is very basic, but it was good. It just worked. And, you know, she cooked that way. She just cooked with love. And my rule is when I go in there, they make a joke of me when they said if they see me dancing, they know the food's gonna taste good. So it's just the love coming out. How you folks? Already? Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming. Thanks a million already.
Norma G's is Lester's dream. From catering to running a popular food truck to finally this space that's making history on the east side. It's the first sit-down dining restaurant in Jefferson-Chalmers in 30 years.
What I'm getting from the people locally is we're glad you're here. It's nice to have something in the neighborhood. They know it's helping to change the neighborhood.
Lester's story isn't a simple one about opening a restaurant, which is hard enough. It's really about how it all happened. He had a lot of help, intentional investment from the neighborhood economic engine guiding the next steps of this area of the city, Jefferson East Incorporated.
Everybody says it takes a village. I think I ended up with a village people because there's been so many people involved in this.
We're here today with a restaurant that's now employing dozens of people, all from the neighborhood.
Norma G's opening in September was a celebration of a new business and the 5-year process where people at Jefferson East helped guide this $1.1 million project, from the community-led ideas to the physical building to foundation support to city investment.
And we create incentives where we would match a great entrepreneur like Lester with space in a growing neighborhood.
Everything that we've done has been really informed by what the community wanted to see.
Derek Scott is the CEO of the East Jefferson Development Corporation, the arm of the organization working on deals to bring more housing and retail to the 5 neighborhoods that Jefferson East represents. He says the group is working to be deliberate in helping in the type of businesses opening up in the neighborhood.
If you're going to do business with us, or if you're going to be a retailer, if you're going to benefit from a lot of the resources that we have, we just ask you to sign on to a few simple things.
like making sure those businesses hire locals in the building process, have realistic price points, and serve the community's needs.
So like here at Norma G's, Lester has 15 employees, 14 of which that can walk here to work every day. So that's huge.
Lester worked with Jefferson East to align his business plans and lease the space at a reduced rate. But help to open Norma G's went even further.
Organizations that I work with, like TechTown, my mentors, you know, coming out of Green Garage and Food Lab and knowing those people, and then the DGC, Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, Motor City Match. I mean, I've got some folks there that were just championing me constantly. So being able to go to them and saying, guys, I'm stuck, or can you help me with this, or, you know, whatever. Having the resources really made a difference.
But not every neighborhood has a powerful organization to gather this type of investment and help navigate the city processes. Derek says they can share what they've learned with other grassroots organizations. When you look at the amount of dollars that are available, the amount of investment projects that are available, it's almost kind of like what neighborhoods are going to be able to be the ones to get them and to capture them and to be able to make them work for their neighborhoods and not just be placed there. It's got to be very difficult if you're living in other pockets of the city and saying, gosh, when is that going to come to my neighborhood or to my street?
And I think we're cognizant of that as well, that we're in a very privileged kind of position that we take with humility and say, you know, we've got an opportunity to do something that not every neighborhood has access to. And so how do we manage that project so that it builds trust even within, you know, the funding organizations within the city, to be able to trust in other organizations to do the same thing and carry the other model. So I think as we see successes, we're trying to figure out ways to share some of our best practices with some of those other organizations and other neighborhoods.
As for Lester, he knows Norma G's isn't the typical restaurant opening story. He has a lot of people rooting for him, and they're expecting a lot too.
It's fun. You got to, you know what? Life would be boring if you didn't have something to push you. And this is, I like the challenges here. I hope I can survive it. But right now it's been, you know, I get up and I have a purpose, and I feel good about that. It's not going to a job. I'm really going to just, it's an experience for me. And if I can give that experience not only to the customer, but my staff, I think that's the key part. We have a lot of conversations, we talk about things.
Jefferson East has several more projects in the works. They're working on 2 buildings with 23 residential units, also a new headquarters at the old Kresge 5 & Dime location, and that'll have a restaurant in it as well. So let's bring in Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of WDET Radio. Guys, it's good to see you. When you see a story like that and you see just one restaurant, but what it took to be able to get that in that deliberate place, you do wonder how many other areas of the city can that happen in, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge we have, is that we don't have the market conditions yet to be able to open a business in a neighborhood and not have this extraordinary lift from the city, from the development corporations, and all these other things. And there are a lot of parts of the city that don't have CDCs. There are parts of the city, vast parts of the city, that don't even have block clubs or community associations. And so you do have to start to wonder, can we ever get to the point where this is sort of ubiquitous in Detroit? And this is not that, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the restaurant owner. It's not a big deal to open a restaurant on Jefferson Avenue, one of the most trafficked streets in the entire city. That should be a no-brainer. But the fact that it's not, the fact that it takes us so much to get that going, it's a reminder of how much work is still ahead of us.
But to be able to have some of these processes in place, and I think really the deliberate investment was what caught me in saying, okay, if you're going to come in, we want you to have a few of these things that you're benefiting the community, and it's something that the community wants and will support, Nolan.
Yeah, and I noticed that he had a liquor license, and those are very hard and expensive to get. If we were to make, if the state were to make liquor licenses cheaper and easier to get, you would have more restaurants popping up, more people taking risks on restaurants in neighborhoods, and restaurants are often the leading edge business, the first businesses to reestablish in a neighborhood. I think we shouldn't be so stingy with them, nor should we set the threshold, cost threshold.
And he did say that was a process to go through.
In other cities, you're right, restaurants, they need low overhead, and so a lot of times when an area gets gentrified, like redeveloped, a restaurant will move, open in a place that's near it because the rents are lower, and that helps move that neighborhood up at the same time. We're not seeing that yet in Detroit because, again, the challenges are still really hard.
You
There's
did
a lot
in
of challenges.
Corktown. I mean, Corktown, the
Corktown
first businesses
it kind of worked.
that really established there were restaurants, and they started bringing in people. And next thing you know, now you go to Corktown and
but that's
something's
been
being
20
built
years
everywhere.
in the making.
It's a long process.
Well, you know, I think I should go out on more of these assignments because the food is really, really good.
Did you bring some carry-out?
I did take a little carry-out home.
One
It was
of
fun.
those
Actually,
plantains.
I actually just sat at the bar and ate. It was really good. So thanks to Lester and to Norma G's. All right, let's get to some headlines. A lot of lame duck work in Lansing plus cuts at General Motors. It was like the headline machine was working overtime in Detroit this week. And we're going to start really with what's going on in Lansing. And Nolan, I want to start with you. We're seeing a list of some very controversial things coming out of the Capitol right now, notably some issues with Line 5 and trying to cement the deal that Governor Snyder made with Enbridge to put a tunnel around that pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac.
And this is what happens in lame duck, particularly when you have had such term-limited turnover. Remember, almost more than half of the Senate is going to be new. So you got a lot of people and a new governor. You got a lot of folks trying to finish up agendas, things they didn't get to. Line 5 is the governor's piece of lame duck. He wants that. They're obliged to take up the minimum wage proposal and the family leave proposals because they took those off the ballots and said, we'll deal with this. So they're obliged to deal with those. But there's also some pretty interesting legislation, some really good reform legislation that I hope they can actually get through, raising the age for trying juveniles as adults to 18 instead of 17, and creating a forensic science commission to make sure the crime labs in this state are getting things right so we don't have so many wrongful convictions. Those are in lame duck and would be worthwhile measures to consider, as would school accountability, the AF grading system that they're long overdue in passing.
What are you seeing? I mean, there's a couple of things that are also disturbing people in looking at the transparency or lack thereof with charitable organizations and what kind of information we're going to be able to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, so let me just say up front, I can't stand lame duck. I think the whole idea of lame duck is really dishonest. If you're not encouraged or emboldened enough to do something and then face voters, you probably shouldn't do it at all. And that should be the lesson that some governor imposes on a legislature someday when they try to do this. At the same time, there are some things that will get out of this that I think make some sense. The raise the age, the transparency with charitable organizations. I'm really dismayed though with the minimum wage and paid sick time chicanery that we have seen with the legislature so far. I mean, the idea of taking that away from voters, taking that option away from voters, and then coming back and doing something that you would never have done if you had to face voters is exactly it's Exhibit A of what's wrong with this process. It's dishonest, and it really just rubs me the wrong way.
You know, I want to take a look at the news that came out of GM and, you know, a little bit down the line of the Trump administration, especially President Trump going after Mary Barra and the decisions that they made this week. But when we take a bigger picture of idling the plant in Poletown, we were talking a little bit about you covering when that decision was made to build that plant. And it's been a study, you were very, very young at the time, a study on eminent domain. When you heard that news this week, Nolan, kind of what were some of the reaction or thoughts from you?
You know, it promises to be another 360 vacant acres of industrial land in the city, and we need to be filling land rather than vacating it. But I think Mary Barra was very courageous here and did what few auto executives did, auto chairman or chief executives did before her, and that is look at the immediate future, or the midterm future, and say, I got to get ahead of some very bad trends. I can't wait for crisis to hit before reacting. You compare what she's doing to what Ford's doing, taking a long, deliberate process. She doesn't want her company to be caught.
Do you think the president's criticism is legit?
No. We wrote an editorial today. He's shaking his fist at Mary Barra. A big contributor to this is his tariffs and the uncertainty over the NAFTA trade pact. These automakers rely on that Canada-Mexico trade pact, and nobody knows now what the future of that is. Plus you've got tariffs on steel, aluminum, other products, driving up costs. That didn't cause these decisions, but it made these decisions more urgent, and perhaps the cuts deeper than
and it adds to the nervous edge of where the economy goes.
At the same time, this is a company that has benefited enormously from our help when it needed help. I think that that argues for a softer touch to some of these things. You know, the Poletown controversy, we destroyed a neighborhood in order for GM to be able to do this. That should factor into these kinds of equations. And I think you saw some people in Washington say this week, we got to deal with these things a little differently. We can't just give away the store to people who are not going to be loyal.
I was surprised to hear that Congresswoman Debbie Dingell was like, I'm not doing another deal with them if they move.
That's absolutely right. They take when they need it, and they will not give when we do, and that's just not okay.
All right, well, we're going to
Nobody wins if that company goes bust again.
I agree with that, but there are other ways to deal with those costs.
All right, and we're going to continue to see how this plays out in the next few weeks and really months down the road. Turning now to the story of a small clothing line with a message. It's called Kill the Hate, and the phrase is resonating across the city. One Detroit producer, Will Glover, has the story.
At the intersection of 2nd and West Grand Boulevard, inside the Fisher Building's Suite C9 is where you'll find Vince McWilliams, the creator of Kill the Hate clothing. For the past 4 years, Vince has developed and expanded his business of fashion with a message, and it all started as a way to cope with losing people he loved.
I lost my big brother, and I also lost my best friend. And things had me fighting with my own inner hate, so I had to figure out how to change that. And me and my friends came up with a concept of letting everything negative die daily. And we was like, what has to die? Hate. So we created Kill the Hate. We wanted everybody to feel the way we feel. I was printing out of my best friend's basement. He's also my partner, named Aaron Ransom. And we've been working at it for so long, and then it outgrew the basement, and we were selling out of the trunk. And then it went from selling out of the trunk to putting it in stores. And from there, I was like, I want my own store. I was in church, and Pastor Barry preached about walking in your power.
Pastor Barry Randolph at Church of Messiah on Detroit's East Side is a community leader who provides space for local entrepreneurs to create, start, and grow their businesses. He's also helped people like Vince make life-changing connections.
And then he talked about me and said he's a prime example of walking in your power, and explained what I'm doing. And it was a guy sitting in church. One of them happened to be the owner of the Fisher Building, and another one happened to be just an amazing guy himself, very powerful, and they wanted to meet me and sit down, have a conversation with me, and it worked out from there. I want to affect the youth. I want to affect everybody, but more so the youth than anything. Because if I would have had something that I could have connected with earlier, I could have changed my way of thinking earlier. You deal with the youth, they're only going to respect music and fashion. This is what they connect with. So I chose to hit them with fashion with a statement.
You'll find Vince's Fashion with a Statement in one of Detroit's most established and well-known shops, aptly named 313, Detroit's brand name. Company owner Clement Thane Brown has been in business for decades and strives to help other young startups in the city.
What was so interesting to me was he used two negative words, kill and hate, and made it positive.
Right.
To me, that's genius. Transmuting that negative energy into something positive. I can actually say kill the hate, and I'm using two words that are extremely negative traditionally, but that's a positive term. Right. That was dope to me. That was super dope.
I want to really impact the inner city in an amazing way. And I think it's possible because I see it. I've seen the roughest and toughest people change.
I commend Vince for taking a negative and turning it into a positive. That's like one of the secrets to success. Is to be able to transmute a negative thought into a positive thought.
So it's all about our approach and actually showing that you care. So I just want them to know that Kill the Hate is here and we care. What can we do to attract people back into the city? As far as the major players, as far as the mayor and things like that, put a little bit more focus on the community. And for the people, man, I hope don't nobody get mad at me for this. Take responsibility, accountability for your own actions and yourself. A part of killing the hate is realizing your fault in the situation and changing it. Being a small business owner, it's a lot to learn. It's a great learning experience all the time, and it's a million different challenges. But I wouldn't trade it for the world, because being in Detroit, it builds certain character. It helps with your creativity, and it helps you to be prepared for tough times. You know, they like to say everywhere else, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. No, you make it in Detroit, you've made it anywhere.
Pretty powerful story and message. And finally, being a parent is probably the toughest job there is, and sometimes it's hard to find guidance and support. We'll meet one Detroit dad who's helping other dads connect with their kids and be the best parents they can be.
And you circle all of the soccer balls and the baseball bats. Go.
Keith Crispin adores his 3-year-old son, Ethan.
Ethan is full of spunk. He is a go-getter. He is a debater. He is far beyond his years in the most inconvenient way. I mean, he's very smart. He's a challenge, and I love it.
Even at dinner time, he tries to parent in a way that develops his son's critical thinking.
You know, my approach to parenting, I guess, is I treat him as mature as he's willing to be. You double counted again. That's why you got to go from left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4. See that? I actually purposely engineer situations that sometimes create adversity for him or require for him to have critical thought. Enrichment is very big for me. I try to be as healthy with the discipline as possible. Explain to him specifically what's going on. Let him know I'm not angry with you, but there's just some things that aren't acceptable, and rules are really important.
Keith brings the same resolve to meetings he started leading at the Detroit Parent Network located in Midtown.
Age ranges from 16 to 96 come out and talk about hot button topics, but also pressing issues that the community is facing.
Men of DPN is looking to grow and reach as many fathers and grandfathers as possible.
There's no membership criteria other than being a man. You know, this is just us having a conversation about things, challenges, obstacles that we face, and having an eclectic group of men, meaning from all different backgrounds, ages, eras, and even geographies. We have a wide range of different programs that reach a wide variety of different folks and family types.
Men of DPN meets on the third Thursday of the month. Discussions include topics like navigating friend of the court, social and economic mobility, and literacy.
This is a psychologically safe environment. There are no stupid questions. There are no critiques and criticisms of people's thoughts, feelings. Even if you just come in and you're a fly on the wall, I think that this is probably the best 90 to 120 minutes you can spend. Sometimes, most times from a minority background, you know, black and brown men, but at the same time, even if you're not, there's a ton of experience and knowledge in the room, and connections and relationships and resources. And just coming and having a conversation with these guys could be life-changing.
At work and at home, Keith says he'll keep working on being a role model to his son and fathers across Metro Detroit.
Big B, little b, what begins with B? You know, I'm working on my re's here lately. Redefine, reevaluate, reimagine. You know, reimagine what parenting is like, or what it should be.
What does it feel like?
To find out more information on Detroit Parent Network, just go to our website. And that is going to do it for One Detroit. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Christy McDonald. We will see you next week. Take care.